Hello everyone, my name is Jalen Dupree, and today in class I will be speaking about the human nature perspectives by authors Richard L. Johannesson and Kathleen S. Vaudet and Karen E. Wedby. First author is Richard L. Johannesson, and he is a professor of communication studies and adjunct professor of English rhetoric at Northern Illinois University. Our second author is Kathleen S. Vaudet, a professor from Northern Illinois University, DeKalb, Illinois, United States. And our last one is Karen E. Wedby, and she is an author. I didn't find too much information about her, but I did find out that she wrote a few books and a few journals. So our first thing we're going to talk about is what is human nature. So human nature is the general psychological characteristics, feelings, and behavioral traits of humankind, regarded as shared by all humans. Aristotle's view, as we know, as a famous philosopher, viewpoint of human nature is that a truly human act stems from a rational person who is conscious of what he or she does and freely chooses to do it. He believed that emotional appeal is necessary to motivate humans to good actions. Now we come to an author named Thomas Garrett, argues that a person becomes more human in proportion to his or her behavior becoming more conscious and reflective. In Garrett's view, suggestive advertising seeks to bypass human powers or reason to some degree, render them inoperative. Advertising is unethical in Garrett's opinion because it uses emotional appeal and it demands a fundamental human attribute and makes people less human. So our first attribute we talked about was a human rational capacity, and we learned about what human nature was. And our second important attribute of human nature is the human symbol using capacity. According to Henry Weinman and Otis Walter, another fundamentally human attribute is the symbol using capacity. Symbol using capacity refers to us using symbols to refer to other symbols such as conceptions, have goals, values, ideals, and to pass on accumulated knowledge and insight from one generation to another. Weinman and Walter believe the power of symbolization is responsible for the genesis and continued growth of the human personality and for the creative works of humanity. The ethical standard supported by Weinman and Walter is that communication is ethical to the degree that it enhances human symbol using capacity, fulfills the need for mutual appreciative understanding, and promotes mutuality of control and influence. So symbols help us understand things more better. By us seeing that symbol, it helps us get that. It helps us build our knowledge of what we're looking at or what we're about to, sign, or, it just helps us human understand things better when a symbol is involved with humans. And our last point is such communication requires in part valid and honest evidence and reasoning along with solutions that are most benefit to humanity. And here are some symbols I'm going to show. Crosses, other things. Even in movies, you have Batman symbols. Superman one is for hope, Batman one, Green Lantern, So we even use symbols in movies and in shows and, everywhere. Humans use symbols. Now, our next point is a famous philosopher named Immanuel Kant. Categorical imperative. So Immanuel Kant, categorical imperative. Here we go. 18th century German philosopher Kant believed that the uniquely human capacity was a sense of conscious moral will and moral reason. So humans We're based off reasoning and our will. In Kant's view, all humans possess rationality in a sense of right and wrong. Universal moral law and apprehended by conscience must be obeyed by all rational beings. Now, Immanuel Kant, this philosopher, had two forms of categorical imperatives. The first one is act only on the maximum which you can at the same time will become a universal law. So this first form basically is expressing that, you should act as if, is it okay for the universal world to do the same thing you're doing? So for example, if, I decided to curse people out or I decided to steal, is it okay if someone steals from me next, or if someone steals from that person next, that person, as a universal thing? So act only as it says on that maximum which you can at the same time will become a universal law. So you have to think before you act. Is it okay for the world to do the same thing you're doing? Our second form is always act so that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in another, as an end and never merely as a means. So I'm gonna repeat that again. Second form is always act so that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in another, as an end and never merely as a mean. So basically that's saying, if I, for example, ask my buddy Jacob, can I have some money to buy these books for my classroom? And he's like, yeah, if it's for their classroom, it's important, yes. But I'm going to use this money that he gives me to buy some new basketball shoes. That's not ethical right there, because I'm lying to him what I'm using his money that he's giving me for, not knowing that he might need that money for gas, his books, school, things he needs to take care of. So I'm using him. So that's what the second form is about. Then I'm going to show a video about Kant's categorical imperatives to help the classroom fully understand my point in categorical imperatives. So then our third very important attribute in human nature is humans as persuaders. What is distinctively human at the most fundamental level is the capacity to persuade and be persuaded with human natures. We come to a philosopher named, an author named Henry W. Johnstone Jr. He develops in foundation of his ethic for rhetoric as in persuasion along with his basic imperative. Johnstone's basic imperative expresses this. So act in each instance as to encourage rather than suppress. The capacity to persuade and be persuaded, whether the capacity in question is yours or another's. So basically he's saying in that, when you act it as a way as encouraging that other, your neighbor, other than, lowering them down, to use the word, uplifting them, not downing them down, bringing them down, And that's what, like, at the end of his statement, he says whether the capacity in question is yours or another. So whether, all of the capacity is in another person's hands or yours, it's still not right to suppress that person. It's better to encourage. And then a last point of his, he said the most ethically responsible rhetoric in Johnstone's view is addressing others with love. And that's very important because the spirit of love and persuasion, he believes, means that we are not motivated primarily by selfish personal interests. Instead, when persuading with love, we respect the truth, respect the other persons participating, and respect those participants needs to know the truth. So as we talked about, Henry Johnstone has a basic imperative. And within his basic imperative, he has duties, two big duties. The first duty is toward ourselves duties and toward other duties. And we're going to go over those. Toward ourselves duties is first, and that there's two aspects that follows into toward ourselves duties. And the first one is resoluteness. And that means that I must not agree with or to the arguments or appeals of others in an unthinking, uncritical, automatic fashion. Second one is openness. Means I must listen carefully to ideas others present and must not be impassive, self-centered, or simply turn a deaf ear. So, for example, if we're all talking in a room and, somebody has an idea, I'm not just going to sit there, ignore them, and not listen to their idea and just be like, my idea works, and I'm not going to listen to yours. That's not right, So he's saying that we have a duty to ourselves to be open to others, hear their ideas, understand their ideas, listen to understand them, not listen to respond. And he has the other duty is toward our others' duties. The first duty in that one is gentleness. Means that I must address others through persuasion rather than violence, either physical violence or symbolic coercive violence. And the second one is compassion. Means that I must listen to others more for the sake of their own welfare and interest than for the sake of my own interest. So basically just putting that person ahead of you, putting yourself in their shoes, understanding where they're coming from. That's a big part in, toward others' duties, and just being gentle, not being so aggressive, shying that person away, making that person feel uncomfortable when they speak, and I feel like that's a big point because, once again, the gentleness, it says, means that I must address others through persuasion rather than violence. So rather me saying I'm going to slap you if you don't listen to me, rather than, me expressing my point, they express theirs, and I'm giving a reason why I stand with my point, So just persuading in a more gentle way, in a open way. I think that's a very important duty that falls into toward others' duties. So as we leave John Stowe's basic imperative duties, we go into another aspect of human nature, and that is communicative competence and the ideal speech situation. So, first we're going to start off. German philosopher and social critic Jürgen, I think that's how you pronounce the name, Jürgen Habermas, introduces a comprehensive theory of communicative competence. Communicative competence refers to how language as a distinctively human capacity functions to foster mutual understanding, shared knowledge, mutual trust, and interpersonal relationships is a major focus of his theory. So, for everyday communication to function smoothly and without question, each participant must assume that the communication of other participants meet these four expectations and assumptions. And we're going to go over the four assumptions of normal human communications. Normal human communication. The first assumption is participants assume that all statements made are capable of being comprehended. Statements are in grammatical, semantical form capable of being understood by others. Second assumption is participants assume that the statements are true representations of existing, agreed upon factual states of affairs. Third assumption is participants assume that statements sincerely and accurately reflect the actual intentions of others. That's a very important one. And the last assumption is participants assume that statements are appropriate. That is, they are in harmony with relevant shared social values and rules. So basically, when you assume something, it is assuming something in a positive way. For example, the last one says assume that statements are appropriate. So you're assuming that my neighbor that I'm communicating with, their statement is going to be positive. It is positive, and that we can share our values and rules without stepping over each other's feet while doing that. Habermas also came up with four constituent element of ideal speech situations. So he brought up these elements that talks about when humans, we are in, like, we're going through a speech with each other. We're speaking to each other in a speech. And his first element is participants must have equal opportunity to initiate and continue communicative acts. So if I'm asking you, it's my turn to speak, I speak, without you interrupting, and vice versa. If you're speaking, I'm not going to interrupt you. I'm going to let you say what you have to say and say, give your opportunity to spill down your, ideas that you have in mind. The second element is participants must have equal opportunity to present arguments, explanations, interpretations, and justifications. No significant opinions should go unexamined. So basically, it's kind of the same thing as the first one. We're having equal opportunity. I'm letting you say whatever you have to say, your arguments, explaining your argument, explaining where you stand, and I'm not interrupting. I'm listening to understand you, and once again, I'm not listening to ignore you or speak over you. And the third element is participants must have equal opportunity to express honestly personal intentions, feelings, and attitudes. So basically, just you have to speak how you truly feel. I shouldn't be speaking with a buddy of mine, or we're in a speech and they are up there feeling uncomfortable, or that person feels uncomfortable to say how they really feel, and that's not right, because the only way to come to an official agreement or an understanding is you have to be honest with each other, and that's a big factor in with this element, that is a big factor dealing with ideal speech. And the last element is participants must have equal opportunity to present directive statements that forbid, permit, and command. So now we move on to Habermas also included a section about justice and solidarity. Habermas emphasized the fundamental ethical principles of justice and solidarity. First of all, let's go over those two terms. Justice basically is it requires equal respect and equal rights for that individual. Solidarity demands empathy and concern for the well-being of one's neighbor. And to go with that, these two principles, they are rooted in the fact that, humans are unique in the social and communicative construction of themselves. So, within ourselves, we have solidarity, we have justice, So, that is a very big principle that is rooted in human nature, in our human nature, in humans. And now we get to our next topic, that is the epistemic ethic. First, let's go over the term epistemology. Yes, I got it right. It is the study of origin, nature, methods, and limits of human knowledge. The term epistemology comes from the Greek episteme, meaning knowledge, and logos, meaning roughly study or science of. And second, we go over a term called reality. Reality simply is waiting to be discovered and transmitted by humans as facts Reality simply is waiting to be discovered and transmitted by humans as facts in a completely neutral, objective manner or as raw material to achieve a persuasive purpose. We go down to American, there's an American social philosopher named Richard B. Gregg. He believes humans in interaction with their environment, such as empirical phenomena, concepts other humans give or create the significance and meaning of the sensations they experience. Another philosopher also believes, Robert L. Scott, expresses that one unique capacity of humans is their ability to create or generate knowledge in and during the actual process of communication. I thought that was pretty interesting that Robert Scott expressed. I'll read that again. He said he expresses that one unique capacity of humans is that their ability to generate or create knowledge in and during the actual process of communication. So basically, while me in this video, the person who I'm talking to, while we are communicating, the person in front of me, we are creating knowledge with each other. I'm saying something that you guys do not know. I'm saying something that that person does not know. That person is giving me ideas that I never knew. And we are switching, giving each other knowledge. We're giving knowledge to each other, and we're doing that in the process of communicating with each other. And I just felt that was very interesting. I never really, sat down and thought about that, but I thought that was pretty interesting. So now, there are 3 ethical guidelines for judging communication. The first one, we should tolerate divergence of viewpoints and the right of others to self-expression. And basically, that is saying we spoil our own potentiality for knowing, if we fail to respect the integrity of, the expression of others. So, if we don't respect the expression of others, and how could we know? How could we gain our knowledge, skills? You know what I'm saying? So, the second one is we should consciously strive toward maximum participation in the communication transaction at hand. And basically, going off that is saying, inaction, the failure to take on the burden of participating in the development of, contingent truths. It ought to be an ethical failure because, if I'm not participating in the communication, I basically, that's not like, you're not engaging yourself, you're not getting that knowledge. I feel like that's why in classes today, a lot of professors say, there is participation points, and I do give a grade for participation because when you participate, you learn better by engaging with the class, communicating with the class, just participating. That's a big thing in life and with humans. The more you participate, the more skilled you'll become in that class, and the more, you'll gain the concept in that course. Lastly, is in our own communication, we should strive to achieve good consequences. And lastly, that is saying, but also we should accept responsibility for all undesired and undesirable consequences of our own communication, so far as they can be known. Okay. So now we get to a very interesting topic with human nature perspectives, and that is the human capacity for value judgment. First, we start off with the American author named Ralph Eubanks. And he sees the capacity to create and sustain values and to apply them in rendering value judgment as the central characteristics of human nature. Humans strive to fulfill their personalities through the values they advocate and embody. For Eubanks, to live as a human being is to choose between better and worse or on the basis of values. He also endorses a second form of Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative. So basically, he created a new form of the categorical imperative that we went over earlier in the slide, and we seen to watch the video of Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative. In Eubank's categorical imperative, he states that you should act so as to treat humanity, whether in your own person or that of another, always as an end and never as a mean only. Second, to promote the primacy of the person in our own communication transaction, we should adhere to the civilizing values of health, creativity, wisdom, love, freedom, with justice, courage, and order. And thirdly, in our communication, we should respect the imperative of civility. And the word civility requires that we avoid communication practices that violate the worth of other people. Practices such as deception, that's one big one, verbal profanity, cursing someone out, and irrelevant attacks on an opponent's character. So like, if you're expressing something and I'm like, you know what, I don't agree with that, and I think, you're very intelligent, you're dumb for saying that, that's attacking, that opponent's character, and that can cause to a big downfall in a discussion or in communication period. So, civility is a big thing. So as coming to a conclusion, I want to say human nature flowers at its fullest, not in isolation, but in relationship and interaction with its environment and other humans. For us humans to flourish, some may do flourish alone, but to become more successful, you have to talk, you have to connect with people. That's in real life. If you want to make it in the music life, in school-wise, the only way you get through school, you have to connect, you have to communicate, you have to put yourself out there to communicate with others, to succeed and to flourish. Professor Christopher Lyle Johnstone expressed the idea that humanness is good and that human nature has worth. In the words of Johnstone, Christopher Lyle Johnstone, he wrote a big, nice quote, and he said that the words of Johnstone, he kind of sums up this whole, chapter of human nature perspectives, and he said the good reasons upon which choice can be made, therefore will articulate, clarify, and affirm those human features that are most to be valued: our resourcefulness, our capacity for loving, our receptiveness to an inclination toward beauty, our emotional resilience and range of sensitivities, our capacities for foresight and self-control, our imagination, our curiosity, our capacity for wonder, our powers of passionate attachment, to name but a few. But there are features that humanists have always embraced. These are among the characteristics of human nature that must be known and prized if we are to live human lives. And basically that sums up my, in the thesis, I spoke about that human nature is based off from many philosophers, based off reasoning, it's based off persuading and, rational capacity, human capacity, rationality. And I feel like he pointed out a lot of good things in this quote, by, talking about the capacity of love and, our curiosity in life, our imagination, our self-control. That's all part of our human nature. That's just human nature in us, how God created us. And before I end, I want to give a relating scripture that I felt that was pretty relating to this chapter, and it is Romans chapter 2, verse 14 through 16, and it is for when Gentiles who do not have the law by nature do what the law requires. They are a law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts accuse or even excuse them on that day when, according to my gospel, God judges the secrets of men by Christ Jesus. And I felt like that was a big quote, because when he says, who do not have the law by nature do what the law requires. They are a law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. So basically, like I said, we have like it's those persuading, those us being rational, us showing love, that's in our human nature. So by him saying like they are a law to themselves, many people, and then he says even though they do not have the law. So even though you do not have the law, it's like instilled in you, or it's inside of you. And this really stood out to me. He said they show that the work of the law is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness. So basically, sometimes people don't even notice, but God created us this way, and how he made us, the things he, the justice, solidarity, persuasion, we kind of don't need to learn that. It's in our hearts. It's how we act. It's human nature. It's just human nature. You hear many people today saying, it's just human nature. And I felt like that was just a kind of connecting thing with this verse. And I think that's probably the biggest phrase that stood out to me. They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts. So even though you may not have the law or things like that, it's written in your heart, because that's how God made you. And once again, it's just our human nature. And thank you, and that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening, and hope everyone has a blessed day. Thank you.